Welcome to Talk to Connect, the podcast where we explore how to have transformative engagement to create stronger personal and professional relationships. I created this podcast because connection with others has become more difficult in this time of heavy social media, differing viewpoints, and increased anxiety in the world. I'm your host, Michelle Franklin, so let's talk to connect. I'm so excited about this episode. Well, I'm excited about every episode, but this one in particular for those who are currently in leadership or planning to go into leadership. The next 2 episodes will up your leadership game, in particular in the workplace. And I'm going to be bold and say, even if you do only half of what I cover over the next 2 episodes, it will make a significant impact on your team and how you show up as a leader. But there's a caveat. You can't just do what I'll cover for it to have impact. You'll need to embody the principles. So for some, that may mean doing some internal, self-reflective type work first. Otherwise, your actions will come across as insincere, and you'll likely get the exact opposite of the results that you want. In this episode, we are exploring leadership that transforms engagement versus manages compliance. For those who are in any type of leadership position or have that as a goal. I can say in close to 40 years of having different types of leaders, as well as being a leader of some sort for more than half of that time, the concepts that I will cover have helped me cultivate the type of leadership that transforms engagement with staff versus manages compliance. Now, you may be asking, well, Michelle, how do you actually know that you have transformed engagement, right? Well, good question. So I'll share just 2 of the many comments that were sent from my team to my supervisor for my annual 360 performance. The first one, quote, I can't imagine a better leader to have transformed the team culture. Michelle has shifted the team's climate in incredibly positive ways. The second one, an amazing leader, the best leader I have ever worked under. And I'm not saying that lightly. I am sure there are things she can be working on, as we all can continue to grow and improve. But when she came, she made this team a dream team. Now, even though that felt incredibly uncomfortable for me to read those, I didn't do it for an ego stroke, but to communicate just one thing. This episode is not from some theory or something I've read in books, though I will give a couple of book recommendations at the end that I've found helpful because leaders are readers. But to let you know, everything I will share and discuss is based on my real life interactions and approach that I've cultivated in my 25 years of leadership. Now, I want to also be fully transparent that what I'll discuss takes an incredible amount of work, time, effort, and emotions. And you likely will need to invest a good year in being consistent with these concepts until you start to see it pay off with your team. But that's the case for anything of substance. It's not overnight. It's like baking. When it's just add water and stir versus something baked from scratch, you can tell the difference. So if you want to be a robotic, show no emotion, my staff need to do what I say because I said it type leader, you can probably just push stop now on this episode because what we're going to discuss is completely opposite of that. So here we go. First, for the purpose of this episode, let's define the title. Leadership that transforms engagement versus manages compliance. It's a simple concept that can dramatically improve the culture of your team. First, take the word transform, causing a significant change in someone or something. So transforming engagement as a leader is being a leader who models, creates, and inspires others to engage from their best self versus a leader that manages for compliance. So let's look at compliance. one who obeys or yields to the requests of others. Now, here in the definition of compliance, if your first thought is, well, what's wrong with that? Then you may have some extra work to do. Now, it is your choice if you want to have the type of leadership where people do what you say only because of your title. But probably if you're listening to this episode, I'm assuming that's not your goal. Now, when I talk about workplace leadership, there are times when I have used the analogy that being a leader in the workplace is similar to having kids. And something about that analogy always kind of just didn't really sit right with me because usually, right after I say it, I find myself always saying, not that staff are kids. So it occurred to me, okay, that analogy, I can still use it, but to really clean it up and make it more accurate, that it's the hierarchy that's involved. Meaning, with your child, they're a minor. They do something against the law, and you can be held responsible, right? So, as a director with staff, when they do something, you as the director are held responsible. So, it's more accurate to say it's an accountability hierarchy because what you're really talking about is where does the buck stop? So, my son, who is 15, takes my car keys, goes out driving, gets into a little fender bender, the buck stops with me. And I'll have to pay more in insurance, possibly go to court, right? So, as director, when staff do something, I don't know, say turn in a report to the bigger bosses late, the buck stops with me because that happened on my watch, under my leadership. So, really, it's not control over them. I think a lot of times when we say hierarchy in the workplace setting, that's what we hear, control over, or we hear king, queen, ruling, dominating over others. But it's not that. It's the accountability hierarchy. Like ultimately, who's going to be held the most accountable for whatever happens? So, because of that, it's so important to really be conscious of that dynamic as a leader. Because when you do have to have that hard conversation with your staff, it's kind of understood that, yes, this conversation we need to have because something happened, and I, as the director, will have to answer to someone higher than me. And who wants to do that? That doesn't feel good. So, if you think about it, when you have to talk with your staff about what occurred, they probably will automatically be on the defense. And it makes perfect sense because they know, okay, we're getting ready to have this hard conversation about something I did. And because we all know the buck stops with the director, they probably will try to cover themselves and maybe even throw me under the bus, is what your staff is likely thinking going into that conversation with you. So they're going to be defensive. That's just human nature. Our brains are wired that way from the fight and flight days of our early beginnings. So, as a leader, knowing that, that means the onus is more on us to frame that conversation to help dissipate some of that defensive energy. When you self reflect and do the pre work we talked about in the first episode in defining hard conversations, to really check in with yourself about your feeling about this person. If they're triggering you or annoying you, reminding you of someone, all of that pre work, right? Then take the time to once again see if there is a part that you can own. Then own it. Then utilize the hard framework to have the conversation with your staff with heart and appreciation while being real and direct. And consider, what is your default response when you know one of your team members has an issue with you? So now the tables are turned, right? So leaders who are about transformative engagement with their team will initiate the discussion with that person. Now, if I'm being honest, I'll share. I always get in my feelings when I know someone has an issue with me. And those who listen to my people pleaser episode know why. That insecure, anxious little girl only got older. But with a lot of pre work, my older self has learned to recognize when it's the little girl reacting to that situation. And instead of trying to ignore or intellectualize what the little Michelle is feeling, I recognize that I have choice. I have agency and I have the power to decide how I will respond. And if I want it to be a transformational leader, I will respond in a way that creates connection with the team member, though not immediate, but over time. Another tool you can implement to start the process of having transformative engagement with your team is to meet with them one on one. And you can do this whether you're new to the team or you've been there for years, and hear their genuine thoughts and feelings and experiences regarding their workplace. I'll share some questions that I used when I started with a brand new team. One, tell me one to two things you like best about your job. Two, tell me one to two things you like least about your job and propose solutions if you have some in mind. Three, tell me one to two things you appreciate most about this team. Four, what are one to two of the biggest challenges on the team and propose solutions if you have something in mind? And five, is there anything else you would like to share about any aspects of the team, individuals, or the overall organization? And if they're not a direct report to me, I will ask them how often would they like to meet. And all of my direct reports, I meet minimum quarterly. And I share with them the reason for this is because I want to develop a relationship with them and hear how they're doing. And also to give them an opportunity to share with me if they have a challenge with the person who they direct report to. So most opt for quarterly. And most of the time, we actually talk about our family, our kids, outside interests, and work if there's something they want to discuss. Now, does this take a lot of time in my schedule? Yes, it absolutely does. But the return on investment is worth the time as you cultivate your own relationships with every single person on your team. In addition to building relationships, I have another goal in asking those questions. And it's a goal that I don't share with them directly, but it's one that I keep in mind. And that is for everyone I meet with, my goal is to address at least one of their challenges within that first year of my hire. And by doing this, it communicates that I not only heard them, but that I take to heart their work experiences. You'll also notice that I ask them to propose solutions. A trait of transformative engagement is to be solution focused to move forward. I was intentional in using the phrase propose solutions in my questions because I wanted to set the tone and communicate to this new team that we focus on solutions and we focus on it together. Meaning, it's not just, hey, let's dump all the issues on the director for them to fix it. No, it's let's collaborate, that I respect their opinion, thoughts, and feedback. And likely, they're more closer to the issue that they're experiencing than I am. So their feedback will come from a perspective that I don't have. And I really do value that. Too many directors try to act like they hold all the answers to everything. And I don't know about you, but I quickly lose trust and respect when someone in leadership starts to make up an answer or they're winging it instead of just saying, I don't know. I'll look into it and get back to you. I mean, my goodness, that goes such a long way in building trust and credibility with your team. We think we have to act like we have all the answers for our team to believe in us, to trust us, to follow our lead. But the irony is when you essentially blow smoke or wing it in your answer, you actually are doing the exact opposite and you are losing their trust and respect. And that will make it hard for them not only to follow your leadership, but also impacts if they genuinely come to you with concerns because they will feel you are more interested in looking right than being authentic. Workforce studies that have come out after COVID actually show that people don't leave jobs, they leave managers. So ask yourself some questions. One, am I the type of leader that people respect and admire? Hint, if you don't know the answer to that question immediately, that's a red flag. Two, ask yourself if there is a leader in your organization that has similar characteristics to you, then ask yourself, what do others say about that person? And if others said those same things about you, would you be proud or concerned? Three, do you get anxious at the thought of asking your team one on one, how do you see me as a leader? If you do get anxious, that's all the more reason why you should. And of course, that's what I recommend. And of course, that's what I've done. And it really was eye opening. So I said earlier I would offer some book recommendations. So I'm a huge fan of Brene Brown. So I'll say anything by her, but two in particular that have been helpful in my leadership journey are Daring Greatly and The Gifts of Imperfection. Also, The Go-Giver by Berg and Mann. So in summary, workplace leaders and future leaders, if you want transformative engagement over managing compliance with your team, lead with authenticity. That's the kind of leadership that elevates people. Transformative engagement creates spaciousness, coaches for growth, is mindful of communication, has relational accountability, and systems that allow others to thrive under your leadership. Our next episode that comes out in 2 weeks will actually give you a framework that I created to implement transformative engagement. Thank you for listening to Talk to Connect. If this episode resonated with you, be sure to follow or subscribe to my podcast and share it with others. A new episode will drop every other Tuesday. And if you have a question you'd like me to answer on a future episode, email me at Michelle at letstalktoconnect.com. That's Michelle, spelled Michell. That's 2 L's, no E on the end, at letstalktoconnect.com. So let's continue talking to connect and create transformation in our personal and professional relationships.